Hi, welcome to our first ever college planning virtual college planning night. My name is Mary Ann Huber. I'm one of the counselors at East Aurora High School, and our other counselors from East Aurora are here, Sarah Newdeck and Aaron Wilcox. And we also do this in conjunction with Iroquois High School and Holland High School. So the counselors from Iroquois, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Rachel Ford. We've also had Sherry Corto and Jennifer John.
And Holland is also joining.
Hi, Lisa Hanlon.
And for our panel tonight, we have Christina Cauchy-Anderson from UB, Sydney Youngberg from Damon College, and Heather Martin from ECC. So tonight we're gonna do a series of questions that we have kind of come up with. They're standard questions that a lot of the students and parents typically ask. And we typically have a financial aid presentation when we do this, but this is anything but typical, just kind of go in accordance with the whole school year. So the financial aid portion of this is going to be on a link that's going to be on the school's website. And it is a presentation from Michelle Rizzo from Canisius College. It's a PowerPoint, but she does talk through the whole thing so that she can explain a little bit more of what's on the PowerPoint. So our link is going to be on the East Aurora Counseling Center. You go to seniors, and then you go to the link that says college planning and financial aid. And Iroquois, they will have it. Go ahead, Rachel.
So on the Iroquois site, you go under the high school page under student support services, and the link is right under the financial aid and scholarships tab.
And then Lisa Hanlon.
Yep, for Holland, you go to the, on the Holland website, you go to the high school page, to the guidance department. Then on the left-hand side, there is a tab for college information. Below that is a tab for financial aid information, and the presentation is there.
Okay, so those will be up on our websites so that you can go and refer back to them. So let's start out with our college reps, and we wanted to give them a chance to talk about their school and what is happening there this year under these circumstances. So if UB, if you would like to kind of talk about how things are going at UB right now.
Sure. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Again, my name's Christina. I am from the University at Buffalo. So I am the counselor for Iroquois High School specifically, but I'm happy to answer questions from any student that's in the local Buffalo area. So UB is not at full capacity, but we are having students on campus currently. We normally have about 8,000 students that live on campus, and we have reduced capacity to about 5,000 for this year. So it's significantly less students that are actually living on campus, and most of our courses have transferred into a remote setting. So the only classes that are having actual in-person for the most part are things that have labs or some other kind of clinical hours where they have to be in person associated with them, so that students are not missing out on those opportunities and then having to wait to take those classes and do those credits later on. So that's kind of where we are as far as our class settings go. So a lot of students did opt to not come to campus this year and stay home if they had a fully remote schedule. But I think the biggest thing to let everybody know is that, we're not closed. We are open. We are fully functioning. We're just fully functioning in a remote setting. So all of us are still working from home. There's only a few offices on campus that are actually open. And for that reason, we're not able to bring physically anybody to campus, at least for the fall. And we haven't made a decision about spring just yet, because the students that are currently living on campus, we do want to create a little bit of a bubble for them so that they're, kind of isolated on campus and we don't have a lot of people coming from all over and bringing, who knows what to campus, right? But, we're keeping on, and we are open, and we are looking forward to bringing in the next class. Some things that have changed this year, and this is true across all the SUNY schools, which we'll probably dive into later, but we are test optional. So the application process looks a little different this year. And so, it's more important to have a well-rounded application than ever, just so that you can provide us with as much information within your application as possible, because some other things we would typically use, like a test score, isn't going to be required for this year. So just things to keep in mind as you're going through the application process. But other than that, things are, usual, and we're still doing everything that we always do, just in a very virtual setting. I will plug our virtual events. So I am in charge of the events at UB. So we have created a wide variety of virtual fall events that are happening now all the way through the middle of December. There's going to be application workshops from admissions. There's financial aid workshops. Those are both weekly. We have honors workshops and EOP workshops, as well as parent-specific workshops that are happening, once a month or so. In addition to that, there's current UB student panels. So if you want to hear from a student, see what it's like to, really be living and doing it currently and pick their brains, those are available. And the end of the last 2 weeks of October, we have academic presentations happening from all of our departments. So feel free to visit our visit page to sign up for any or all of that.
Thank you. It's the new normal now, right? And then from Damon, Sydney Youngberg.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Youngberg, as she mentioned. Damon is pretty much similar to UB. The only difference is we have allowed all students to be on campus. So we have limited housing. So we've reduced the number of people per dorm and per suite. So there's not as many people per suite to kind of limit the contagion. And we've asked professors to kind of use their discretion on whether or not classes will be on campus. So a lot of our classes for programs such as physician assistant or physical therapy, where there's a lot of labs, those classes are online. I'm sorry, in person. Some of them, maybe the liberal arts or business programs where they have a little bit more liberty to be online, have chosen to do that. So it's kind of just been up to the professor this year on whether or not the classes will be in person or online. Similar to UB, we have gone test optional as well. SAT and ACT exams keep getting canceled left and right, and we recognize that. So I always tell students, if you're able to take the SAT or ACT, if things start clearing up, I mean, hopefully by spring things start clearing up, but for Damon, we use a holistic review now as well for your application. So similar to what Chrissy said, we encourage everyone to put as much as they can on the application. However, if you do take the SAT or ACT and score really well, it might help you in scholarship determinations, because scholarships are determined by GPA and/or SAT or ACT score. So it can only help you if you don't score as well as you'd like. You don't have to send us your score. So I do still encourage taking the SAT or ACT if possible, obviously with the safety precautions in place and everything. But yeah, we're fully functioning on campus. We've been back in the offices since about June. So we're kind of adjusting to the new normal with social distancing and taking everything serious. We had every student test for COVID before they could come on campus to either live or just be in in-person classes. Out-of-state students did quarantine for 2 weeks and were consistently testing students just about once every month. Every student gets tested, so we're limiting the spread of COVID by doing consistent testing, and we've had really great results. So I think that kind of hints everything Damon has been doing. If I missed anything, I'm sure I'll think of it later and let you guys know, but there's a lot going on. Campus is proceeding just with masks and social distancing. So it's been good to see some students on campus and have a little bit of normalcy.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the community college, ECC is Heather Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So at Erie, we don't have any on-campus housing, so that is not something that we are dealing with this particular semester. Most of our lecture classes have moved online. So they're all virtual and they're being either held synchronously or asynchronously. And the only classes we typically tend to have on campus at this point are those with more specialized labs. So some of our technology, some of our health programs that really need that hands-on experience. But our on-campus traffic has dropped dramatically. And we are, of course, using the proper PPE, social distancing practices, things like that when students are on campus. In regards to our services, most of our enrollment management offices, financial aid, registrar, admissions, things like that are open a couple days a week at each campus. There is a schedule in place. But other than that, we are functioning remotely. So students are certainly still able to reach out to us via phone, email. We're happy to set up a time to meet with students over like Zoom or WebEx or just over the phone. So certainly feel free to reach out if you have any questions. As far as moving forward, we are still accepting applications. Our fall application is live. So we definitely encourage you to get that process rolling and start applying as soon as you're able to and ready.
Sounds great. So thank you very much for like talking about your schools. And like now we're going to move into like the question portion of this. There is a chat where you can ask questions if there is something specific that you want to know. And at the end of the presentation, we will go over it if we haven't already asked it within the questions that we're asking. So, because we do have a public school, a private school, and a two-year school, you are all more than welcome to answer these questions if you feel that your school is a little bit different than the answer. So the first question is about students with a major, choosing a major. How important is it for a student to have decided on a major or a career before finalizing their college list? Must you always declare a major when you're applying? So whoever would like to take that first.
I'll jump in on that one first. So it is not uncommon for students to start college and not know what they would like to go into. At Erie, we do offer a program called General Studies. It's a liberal arts area. It provides a lot of flexibility for students to get many of their general education courses done, but then they can also utilize some of those open electives to explore various areas that they might have an interest in. And for students that are undecided or not really sure what they want to go into, many times I'll recommend that they take a career inventory assessment. We do offer one free of charge for students through our career services office. It's called the Focus 2. It's an assessment that you answer a series of questions, and then based on those results, it generates a list of potential careers that you might find interesting. And we do have staff on campus to help with the researching of majors and the researching of jobs and things of that sort, so that students can come in, explore a little bit, but then hopefully soon in thereafter find something that they have an interest in to look into pursuing.
Great.
So at UB, it's perfectly fine for you to be undecided and not sure what you want to do as well. So we do have undecided. It's just under E in the drop-down menu for exploratory. Sometimes students are looking for undecided and they don't see it, and it's because it's not listed. But exploratory is what you're looking for. So perfectly fine. If you apply through exploratory, you're matched with a major explorer's advisor who is there specifically to help you figure out what it is that you want to do through taking introductory classes in some areas you think you might have an interest in, and really, checking things off your list of things that you do like and that you don't like along the way. At UB, for most of our programs, aside from maybe architecture and engineering, as long as you declare your major by the end of your sophomore year, so 2 whole years in, you'll still be able to graduate in a 4-year time frame. It's not really going to put you behind at all. That being said, a lot of our majors at UB are direct admit, meaning that if you meet the criteria, you can be admitted into the program directly coming out of high school. So if you do have an area of interest that you are thinking about, I would encourage you to put it on your application so that you could potentially be directly admitted into it. That way you don't have to go through any additional processes once you get to UB. And then if you find once you start that you don't like that major, it is pretty easy to switch to a different degree. The hardest switch is always going from like an arts or humanities to a hard STEM. But I think very rarely does that typically happen. I think for the most part, students will start in a hard STEM and then realize that it's not for them and they'll switch to an arts or humanities or something along those lines. Or if you're going from a STEM to a STEM, that's a very easy switch too. So changing your major, even if the one that you chose on your application that you originally were admitted for isn't the way that you decide to go, is a very simple thing to do. So we do encourage you to choose a major, but if you don't want to and you want to just go exploratory, that's perfectly fine too at UB.
Sure. And here at Damon, I kind of echo everything Chrissy and Heather said. The only thing I would add is we do have a few programs where it is an accelerated program, such as our physician assistant 5-year program. Physical therapy is a 6-year program, and nursing is a 1+2+1 structure. So for those 3 programs, it's something important to declare that early, right from high school, because when you apply, especially for physician assistant, there is an interview portion of the application. So it is pretty important to declare that from the start with your application. It's not to say that it's impossible to do physician assistant, PT, or nursing if you don't declare it right away. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. So if you're looking for that accelerated route, it is more important to kind of put that on your application right away.
Sometimes when a student is not really sure about what they want to do, they may start out at a community college with the idea of transferring then to a 4-year school. I know like ECC, the credits will transfer to UB. I'm wondering if they transfer to Damon, and how do they go about like starting that when they start at ECC?
Great question. Typically, community college credits transfer very well into Damon. I would say it's pretty rare that ECC credits especially don't transfer to Damon. I'm not a transfer counselor myself, but from what I've heard in talking to our transfer counselors, the articulation with community colleges is pretty smooth. Like I mentioned before, the only time it gets tricky is with PAPT, just because we don't typically allow transfers into those programs. There are exceptions, but any other major, it's a very smooth transition.
Okay. With the current situation, college reps are not typically allowed in any of the high schools that I'm aware of. So the college reps can't come in to meet with the students. What are the benefits of meeting with a college representative through like a virtual meeting since they can't come to the schools? And how do they go about doing that too?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll hop in here. It is still super important, maybe even more important in this environment, for you to have those conversations and have those virtual meetings with the admissions counselors. I know that we're all, Zoomed out or technologied out, and after you're done in school during the day, you probably don't want to hop on again to speak to, a counselor or something like that. But it's very important, because we are your resource to learning about the university, to applying to the university, and being accepted into a university. So it's important for us to have that connection with you as we see applications start to come in. Most admissions counselors have territories. So for myself, for example, I'm responsible for all the Northtown, schools in Buffalo. And so when I'm reading those applications that come in. And so if I've met with students, I'm recognizing their name as I'm reading their application. I can advocate for a student better if I've met with them and I've had those conversations and I know them a little bit. If I've never seen your name before, I'll read your application the same as everybody else's. But if you have a specific situation, I won't know that unless you have those conversations with me. And so that's true, that you want to have those conversations with your admissions counselors. And especially because most schools, not all, but most, I think, are not really allowing people to come to their campuses right now. Really, the only way to interact with these schools is to make sure that you're having these discussions with the admissions counselors and learning what you need to do in these settings. So, that's what we're here for. Utilize us. You're not bugging us. Students, sometimes they'll start an email with, "I'm sorry to bother you." You're really not, I promise. Bother us, bug us, send us emails, because it's our job and it's what we enjoy doing and it's what we're here for.
Yeah, and I would echo what Christina was saying. We are here. Certainly call us. We're more than happy to speak with you over the phone, but also take advantage of those virtual opportunities that are on all the schools' websites, the virtual tours, the virtual open houses, the virtual student panels, any of those virtual information sessions. The more opportunities that you have to interact with us and learn about our schools, the more prepared you'll be to make an informed choice of which school you'd like to go to once that time frame comes around.
I agree with everything previously said. The only thing I would add is what I've echoed my entire career in admissions is how important it is to visit campuses and get the feel of the campus and see what the life is like on campus. And I still think that's very important. However, it might not be possible right now. Damon, however, is still allowing visitors on campus. It'll be a solo tour with you and your family. So you can still come see campus, but if you're not comfortable with that, or maybe don't have the time or the ability to come, that's totally fine. We are still doing online visits. You can have a virtual visit with just me. I'll give you personalized attention. It's not like I'm speaking generally, as sometimes I would in a high school visit when there's 20 students in the room. Not every conversation applies to every student. So by having a virtual visit, you get your personalized answers. You get to know the admissions counselor you're talking to well, and especially at a small school like Damon, I know all the students that I bring in from my territory. So I like to meet everyone. I like to know your story. I like to know who you are as a person. And turn on your cameras when you're in the visit. No one likes to talk to a black screen. That's what I've found with the visits I've been doing lately. Everyone just kind of sits there with their camera off, and I don't know who you are. I don't know what you look like. If I were to see you on the street, I want to say, hey, Kayla, it's good to see you. Do you have any more questions on Damon? I'm happy to help no matter what the instance is. There's call, text, email. With all of the technology resources there are today, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to talk to me. So trust me, like Chrissy said, you are not a bother. I love talking to students and making sure that you have all your questions answered. You're comfortable with moving through the next steps in the process. And I won't know to do that unless you get in touch with me. So please make sure you are doing that. I'm more than happy to help.
Great, thanks. So basically the students should probably check like whatever school that they're interested in, their website, to see, first of all, if they can be on campus, and then also to be able to connect with their college rep is the best thing. So besides location and size, what other characteristics of a college campus should students consider? And major, I guess major would fall into that then too.
Yeah, I think going to a school, especially if you are an undecided on your major, or maybe you're picking between 2 or 3 majors that you have interest in, make sure you're visiting / talking to schools who have all of your interests. If you're interested in playing club sports, make sure they have that. If you're interested in Harry Potter Club, if they don't have it, learn if you can start it. Honestly, college is what you make it. I always say, make sure you're joining the clubs, make sure you're getting involved, make sure you're choosing a major that's interesting to you. And honestly, I didn't know many people in college who didn't change their major. So going to a school that has multiple options for you and in your interests, I think is definitely important. And as I kind of hinted on before, getting the vibe and the feel of a campus is important, because ultimately that's where you're spending the next 4 years of your life. So you want to make sure you like the campus, you like the people you meet, and how you feel when you get on campus. So that's definitely important to take into consideration.
Yeah, I like to tell students that college is not just about the academics. Of course, that's, arguably maybe the most important, but college is also about the adult that you're going to become, and, the views and the beliefs that you're going to find within yourself. That gets super cheesy, but it's true. So I tell students to make sure that not only are they finding and choosing a school that is going to give them the academic abilities that they're looking for, the size, the location, all of that, but also all the social opportunities that they're looking for, because they are just as important.
Okay. So next we wanted to really talk about a topic that has come up quite a bit, the SATs and the ACTs. As you said, the testing centers have been closing left and right. A lot of the seniors have not been able to take the SATs, and I know a lot of the schools have waived that requirement, or they're completely test optional. So I'll ask a couple of these together because they're very similar. The SAT and the ACT, do you have a preference as to which one they are taking? Do you require SAT subject tests, maybe for a particular program? And how this year in particular are the SAT and ACT scores, how are they going to impact admission decisions and scholarship opportunities?
So At Erie, we do not require students to take the SATs or the ACTs. We never have, even prior to this taking place. If students do take them, we can use them for math and English course placement to help us determine which math and English courses you'll start off by taking. But currently at this time, we're also able to determine that from other mechanisms as well. So it's certainly not a requirement that students complete those assessments prior to applying to our school at all. In regards to scholarships, again, same thing. We don't require them, so that's not anything that is taken into consideration for any type of scholarships that are offered through the school.
As I mentioned before, we are completely test optional. I know I said this earlier, but if you can take the SAT or ACT, I would recommend it, just because no harm, no foul. If you don't like your scores, don't send them to us. If you like your scores and you score higher than you thought you would, it can help with scholarship determinations. At Damon, when you apply, you'll be automatically considered for any of our merit scholarships. While we do a holistic review for admissions purposes, our scholarships rely only on GPA or SAT or ACT scores. So that's just kind of to keep it fair, level the playing field. So if you do score higher on the SAT or ACT, it can help you. It can't hurt you. You don't even have to send us your scores. If you keep in contact with me and say, hey, I scored a 1140 on the SAT, will this change my scholarship determination? I can tell you unofficially whether or not it will. So you don't even have to send it officially. If it changes it for the worse, you don't have to send it. If it changes it for the better, absolutely go ahead and send it. It'll only help you. But if you can't take the SAT or ACT, do not stress about it. This is why we implemented the test optional policy, because we realized it's near impossible to take the SAT or ACT this year. Hopefully in the spring it clears up a little bit, so some juniors and maybe even seniors can take it. But I would say don't stress about it. Focus on your senior year grades and enjoying your senior year, and ultimately making your college decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the same is true at UB, but across the board, we're not requiring it for anything. So I've been asked if honors college is going to require it. They will not. Majors not requiring, scholarships not requiring. So again, while we're encouraging students to send them, if they take it and they're able to, and they feel like their score is an adequate representation of their academic abilities, you can still send them to us. What I've been trying to explain to students, at least for UB, is that, students say, am I disadvantaged if I don't send standardized test scores and another student does? And really the answer to that is because we're holistic, we only ever review a student's application in its entirety, kind of in a bubble. So we look at one student's application and we say, based on the materials in this application, can we admit this student at UB? Do we think that they will be successful at UB? And then once we make a decision, we move on and we start the process over with the next application. We're not comparing applications apples to apples, where if one student has a set of test scores and the other one doesn't, the one without the test scores will be disadvantaged or anything like that. So the name of the game right now is really just, if you can take it, certainly try. It's not going to hurt. But if you're really having a hard time taking it, don't stress about it. Like Sydney said, it's really not that big of a deal this year.
So are UB and Damon, are you test optional? You test optional for this year. Is that something that's going to continue on, or is that just a temporary situation?
So for us right now, it is just temporary. It's for the next 3 semesters. So spring 2021, fall 2021, and spring 2022 semesters, any student applying for any of those 3. I don't know what the decision will be beyond that. I suspect that we'll probably go back to requiring standardized test scores, just knowing UB. But for at least right now, because we know how difficult it is for students to take the exams, we are temporarily, is the terminology they're using, suspending. And just to add into, because I remember it was part of the last question, we don't really use subject tests at all either, the SAT subject tests. So if you're taking them, it's not going to make too much of a difference at UB.
Same for Damon, requiring the subject tests. We haven't been told whether or not it'll be temporary or permanent, the test optional policy. if I had to guess, my gut would say more permanent, just because it's been a transition. A lot of colleges across the nation are moving towards test optional. So I think in order to kind of adapt with the times, obviously I can't say anything officially. This is just my professional opinion. But I would hope in the future that we would still remain test optional. It's been a process to kind of adapt our admission standards and qualifications in order to maintain this. So I'm hoping that in the future it will be test optional, especially because I was a kid who didn't test well in school. I know how it is for those students. So I want to advocate for you. Like I always say, I'm looking for reasons to accept you, not to deny you on your application. So give me everything you got. And if that includes a SAT or ACT score, send it on over.
So your merit-based scholarships that are awarded typically include like an SAT or an ACT score along with their GPA. How is that going to be affected now this year?
So in previous years, it has always been a combination of GPA and SAT or ACT score. This year will only be based on GPA. We haven't started reviewing applications just yet. It's still pretty early in the process. So I don't know the exact numbers, or else I would give them to you. But it'll just be based solely on GPA. We're not rounding up. So if you have a 94.7 GPA, you will be given the scholarship for a 94 average. That's just kind of how like our new matrix will work. So it is kind of important that you're fighting for those extra points in every way you can, but it will just be based on GPA.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for that at UB just yet. We haven't started reviewing applications either. And the scholarship question and discussion has been ongoing since the summer, and nothing has come down to us as admissions counselors yet as far as how that's going to go. So the best advice I can give you is to just, keep doing as best you can your senior year. Make sure that you are complete by December 15th, which is the scholarship consideration deadline. And when we have more information, we will put it on our website. Unfortunately, I can't give you a definitive date on when that might happen. My suspicion is that they may ask for additional materials, maybe another, personal statement or something. I'm just not sure. But, if we don't have standardized test scores, we can't use them. So they'll have to make a decision without them.
Yeah. And at Erie, our scholarships are not merit-based. Each year, our foundation puts our application live in about early November through early February or so. We have over $300,000 in various scholarships available, all sorts of different criteria, different majors. So I always encourage students to always go online, take a look, see which ones you might qualify for, and then certainly apply during that open time frame. Sometimes we have scholarships that don't have any applicants to them, so sometimes they go unclaimed. So definitely take advantage of those. But again, they're not merit-based. It's a separate application that students need to complete.
Great, thank you. So as the schools start doing their application review process, GPA, rank, the rigor of the coursework, SAT and ACT scores if available, letters of recommendation, demonstrated interest. How does your school look at all of these factors? Is there like an order of importance that you look at? I know it's holistic, but how exactly, when you're looking at the application, do you kind of come to a determination if they would be accepted to your school?
I can start with that. So we do look at all of the above of what you just mentioned. I will add, we also look at whether or not you've taken 4 years of math, science, English, and history, those main courses. We look at if you have any extenuating circumstances, your community involvement, if you've done any activities. We also do read the essay. You'll get points almost for your content, and also spelling and grammar. So we do notice spelling and grammar mistakes. I always recommend having an English teacher or your guidance counselor, anyone who's good with grammar, to read your essay, because we do take notice. Other than that, everything is almost ranked pretty equally, with the GPA and Regent scores weighing the heaviest, I would say. We look to make sure that you have passed all of your Regents, and if you score higher than a 70 or higher than an 80 on your regents, that's even better for you. I know some regents have been canceled this year, so not sure how that's going to be reflected just yet. But it's a learning process. We're kind of adapting as we go. And we're not like docking points if you didn't take the regents or anything from what I've understood so far. If you're not able to take the regents, we can't hurt you for that. So we do take into consideration the circumstances surrounding your transcript. And that's why I say, give me everything you got in your application. There is a personal statement section for a reason. If your grades dipped for any reason, if you weren't able to take a test for some reason, please tell me. Otherwise, I will never know. And that is important because ultimately these applications go through 2, if not 3 reads. So I'm not the only one making the decision. Everyone has to be aware of the circumstances. If you tell me in person, I might remember, but if it's not on your application, the next reader probably won't know. So please make sure you write everything on your application if possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, you be holistic too. I would say, like Cindy was saying, grades, the transcript, the types of classes that you're taking, the level of rigor of classes that you're taking. I would say that weighs, maybe just slightly above the rest. Kind of in the situation where if you are not a fantastic student, maybe you've struggled throughout high school, we're going to have to dive a lot deeper into your application. Like Cindy said, we're trying to find reasons to accept you, right? So we're looking for those reasons within your application, and those reasons come from things like the extracurriculars list or the personal essay or the letters of recommendation or whatever else might be in there. So I would say, especially this year, even more than other years, those other materials, other components of the application are going to be that much more important because we can't use something like a standardized test score. That's always been, kind of used as an indicator of college readiness, right? So we have to find those things elsewhere in the application. So, but at the end of the day, the grades are important. You have to show to us that you would be able to be successful in college level classes. So if you've really struggled in high school, if your grades are particularly low, I don't know that an essay or the extracurriculars list or anything like that would be able to save you. That might be the kind of student then that we encourage to start at a community college and, work their way up and show that they can be successful in college. But for those students that are maybe kind of middle of the road, all those additional things in your application are going to be that much more important.
At Erie, you'll find that we're a little different being a community college. Most of our programs are what we call open admit, which means that typically the only requirements to get in are to hold either a high school diploma or a high school equivalency diploma. We do have a few programs on campus. They typically tend to be our health sciences that have set admissions criteria where they look for certain GPAs, certain math and English levels for students to be at, certain courses that are required, things along those lines. But again, most of them are what we call open admit. But we do still encourage you to put the effort and the rigor into your coursework. Do as well as you can. Make sure you're taking advantage of all the opportunities that are presented to you at the school, whether it be to take some electives, maybe take some AP or college level courses. The more of that you do in high school, the better it's going to prepare you for the college level work once you get to the college that you have chosen to go to.
Great. So unfortunately, as we've already noted many times, SATs, ACTs, Regents exams are not going to be playing as much of a factor into a decision. So how important are the letters of recommendations, and what are you looking for in a letter from a teacher or a counselor, and how many should they have? I know some schools limit how many letters that they will take, and I didn't know if that would increase this year since the other things have been pulled back, or is it still like 1 or 2 letters is sufficient?
Yeah. So letters of recommendation at UB are optional. They have been for a couple years now, but especially this year, as we keep reiterating, a really personalized, genuine, well-written letter of recommendation that, can let us know who the student is, not just academically, but also as a person, is going to make an application look really great and add a lot of weight to an application. So while it's, recommended, not required, in particular this year, I'm really encouraging students to send at least one, and UB will take up to 3.
Similar to us, however, we do require a letter of recommendation. At least one physician assistant does require 2. Me personally, I don't want to read more than 3. We have a lot of applications to read during the year. So if I'm spending an hour on your application, like, I get the point after a couple letters of recommendation. These are supposed to be written by people that are close to you, who truly know your character. I always say the best examples are a teacher, a guidance counselor, a coach, your supervisor at a job, someone who gets to know you. Not only, like, mom and dad are going to say great things about you, of course, but I want someone who is not obligated to, someone who truly believes that you are a good student, a good worker. And I want that to be reflected in 1 or 2 letters. After 3, it gets a little bit redundant. So I wouldn't recommend sending more than 3. And even so, 3 probably just for physician assistant, where it is pretty competitive. Other than that, we do look at the letters of recommendation. Like I said, anyone but a blood relative really is acceptable. So if you have a couple of people, I always say give them at least 2 weeks notice as well, because no one wants to write a letter within 5 hours of the deadline. They're not going to say the best things about you in that time. Give them a couple weeks to kind of sit and think about your best qualities and make sure that those are reflected in the letters of recommendation. So there's quite a few factors when it comes to picking a letter of recommendation, but they do help your application in the end. So they are pretty important.
And at Erie, we certainly do not require the letters of recommendation for our programs. I can't think of one that does at this point. So we certainly don't require that you submit them at all.
Okay. I will second that on giving people 2 to 3 weeks to write that letter, especially this year, because teachers and counselors are super busy just trying to keep school going as it is. We did notice on the Common App that there is an essay required in part of the application that is about COVID-19 and how that affected you, that it's optional to write that. So is that in addition to the essay that they would be writing in part of the application? Or do you want an essay? The Common App gives you like 7 prompts as to what to write about. But they basically are saying to stay away from talking about COVID unless it had like some sort of huge effect on your decision making and things like that. But there is a section on Common App now that has an essay that is directly related to that. Is that going to play an effect into your decision making?
Sure. So that's actually, I don't know if the rest of my colleagues knew that, but that was something that must be relatively new because I wasn't aware. But I think that's totally fine. I would encourage students to still choose one of the main prompts in the personal essay, answer one of those, and write a really well written, that's a tongue tire, personal essay about something that is important to them. What I particularly look for in a personal essay is for a student to talk about something that they're passionate about, or a time when they had to overcome an obstacle. Maybe they were trying to accomplish something and there were obstacles in their way and they were able to, persevere through that. It's something that we call grit. Those are the kinds of things that we generally look for in a personal statement because they can tell us a lot about a student and how they approach things in their lives. If there is an additional section this year about how COVID has affected them, I would encourage a student to fill that out if they have a genuinely very specific situation with COVID that can really add something additional to their application and could, make a big difference for us reading the application, right? So if if you're just saying, oh, well, COVID was difficult, I had to stay home, school was a little harder this year because it was virtual, that kind of thing, we know that. Right? Everybody's dealing with those kinds of things. But if you had a very specific situation in response to COVID and it has, really deeply affected you and your family and you'd like to fill that out, we will read whatever you put in your application.
Yeah, I agree. And I know I've said it a ton of times tonight, but I'm looking for reasons to accept you, not to deny you. So if you have a circumstance that really affected your life due to COVID, absolutely put that in your application. At the same time, this year, I suspect a lot of essays written about COVID as an admissions counselor, like I said, we read a lot of applications every year. We read a lot of very similar essays, most particularly about how you broke your ankle in 8th grade at track and then won the championship the next year. More about grandparents dying. I get that has a big effect on your life, and I'm very apologetic for you, but I will read 100 of each of those application essays a year. So my biggest points of advice always when talking about the college essay, and I do talk about the essay a lot because I know it's a stress factor for a lot of students, is make sure it is personalized to you. I want to get to know you as a person and your personal experiences. If you've had to overcome something, as Chrissy said, that's something I really want to learn about. If you have a unique experience, absolutely put that in your essay. I also wasn't aware of the COVID section on the application. It could be because we haven't started reading applications yet. I just haven't seen an application for this year yet. So I could see that in the next few weeks when we do start reviewing. But if it's not mandatory and you don't have a personalized or extenuating circumstance surrounding COVID, then I wouldn't not waste your time, but don't spend a lot of time on that section if there's not something super specific to you. Just because I want to read different essays every time. I want to be excited to read the essay. I want to be captivated in the first paragraph, Like I said, we do look at the essays for not only content, but for spelling and grammar. So while those are important, every student has had to feel the effects of COVID this year. So odds are, in my guess, you're probably not going to have super personalized experiences, but absolutely, if you do, I want to read that. So it's just kind of based on the student, I think. And as I mentioned before, if you want to talk to me about any essay topics or what to put on your application, that's what I'm here for. So don't ever feel like that's a bother.
Okay. I know, Heather, I know you're not on Common App, so I'll let it, I'll just move on to the next question. Extracurricular activities, community service also is going to be limited this year because most organizations are not taking volunteers. So that was one of the factors that you were talking about as far as getting the admission. How is that going to be affected now? Is it better to have like a long list of that you just volunteered, like a couple of hours at each place, or should you have something that has a depth of commitment, over a longer period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I look for longevity and commitments. Anyone can volunteer for 4 hours on a Saturday, every Saturday for the rest of your lives. But if you have a longer commitment, that's going to be even better for you on your application. That's not to say having a bunch of different volunteer experiences is bad by any means. Like I said, put everything on your application. But definitely longevity and experiences is good. And as I mentioned before, if the opportunity is not available to you, such as our Regents, an SAT or ACT, or in this situation, volunteer experiences, if it's not available to you, we're not going to dock you for not having those experiences. We can't blame you. So I wouldn't stress out if you don't have those experiences just yet. Like I said, there's a personal statement on the application for a reason. So if there is anything you want to include, put it there, and I'll be able to see that on your application.
Yeah. So what we will do at UB, which I imagine other schools will do too, is that we're going to take into consideration whatever you've done up until the point that COVID shut everything down. And then, whenever we get back to normal, if the senior year is still happening and you're able to do something, we'll take that into consideration beyond that point then. But during this situation when people can't go do things, we get it. So we won't dock you for that, just like, Sydney was saying. But I'll just reiterate again, it's going to sound like a broken record, but I'll reiterate it again. Because of this situation, because of the fact that there may be holes in your extracurriculars list, because we've all had to stay home, you may not have SAT scores, that sort of thing. It is that much more important that you write a good essay, that you get a good letter of recommendation, that you put a lot of effort into the other parts of your application. I know, broken record, change it, right? But it's really, really true. So this year, more than any other year, if you were thinking that you might just kind of quickly run through an application and send it along and be done with it, take that extra time to really make sure that it is right, that it is full, and that you've, put the time and energy and the effort into it, because it's really going to be important this year.
Okay. So the age-old question, is it better to take an AP course and get like E's and C's, or would it be better to take a regular level course and get A's and B's?
Yeah, this is I like answering this question because we get it all the time, and I do think it's important. So we want to see that you're challenging yourself while you're in high school, but only to the extent that it's not going to overwhelm you. So we tell students that you shouldn't take APs if it's going to cause you to drop below a letter grade of where you generally are, right? So we're saying typically it's probably A students or maybe high B students that are thinking that they're going to take AP courses, right? And so we wouldn't want to see you drop below a B in that class, right? Something along those lines. You don't want to do so much that you're overwhelming yourself and you're not still succeeding. So taking a bunch of APs and getting a bunch of C's and D's is not going to help your application. So I encourage students to take APs in areas where they have success already. So if you're not a good math student, maybe skip AP Calc and just take a regular Calc or something, If you are maybe really fantastic in history, though, take that AP History course your senior year. That's really the thing to think about. So it's always very personal and it's specific to each individual student. But, I encourage you to talk to your counselors and decide what is best for you as an individual student so that you do not overwhelm yourself.
Everyone else is in agreement. Okay. We're getting towards the end here. We're almost done. With regards to application deadlines, there's rolling admission, early action, early decision. Does your school use early admission, and who should be using one of the early admission options? Is there kind of a little bit of a criteria there that they should be looking at? And can you explain like the difference between early decision, early action, and rolling?
That's a really great question. So to explain the differences between early decision, early action, and rolling admission, early decision is a binding application. Typically, students will apply early decision to their absolute number one top choice school. It's telling a school, if I get in, I am coming here. We're able to advocate for students a little bit more when they apply early decision. Early action still allows you to get your admissions decision sooner, but it kind of takes away that binding aspect. It still tells the school that you're in my top choices. We're probably still going to be able to advocate for you just a little bit more, but you're not really like binded into coming to that school. And rolling decision is non-binding, nothing really fancy about the application. It's just your general application to the schools. At Damon, we only do early decision and rolling decision. So our early decision deadline is November 2nd. We need to have all of your application material in by then in order to meet the early decision deadlines. When you apply early decision and deposit by the deposit date, you are getting a 4-year tuition guarantee at Damon. So typically every school's tuition goes up a small percentage every year, and that's not just Damon, it's every school across the nation. When you apply early decision at Damon, you're locked into the tuition rate for year 1 through years 4. So whatever percentage tuition goes up will be given to you in a scholarship. So that's the perk of applying early decision. Most schools do incentivize an early decision application. Not all of them are the 4-year tuition guarantee. But at Damon, it does save you probably about $5,000 or $6,000 in the long run. So it does add up. We have a priority deadline only for PA and nursing students because those are the programs that fill up the quickest here at Damon. So we need to have your application sooner. That's not to say you won't be considered if you apply after that deadline, but to get full consideration for PA and nursing, you should apply by November 20th. That is very important, especially for PA. As I mentioned, there is an interview component. So most of those interviews are going to come from students who apply by the November 20th deadline. And then finally, rolling decision is no real deadline on that. You can apply whenever. I always recommend applying earlier, not only so you can get your admissions decision sooner, but for scholarship consideration. We have an event called Scholars Day where our students who fall within our top 2 scholarship tiers are invited back to come interview on campus with alumni, faculty, anyone from the Damon community. And on that day, 10 students are given a higher amount of scholarship, which replaces their initial merit scholarship. But there are 2 full tuition scholarships for $17,000 and 4 $15,000 scholarships. So that day is on February 8th. You'll have to apply by February in order to be considered for that day. But the sooner the better. So that's just one instance where applying early can be beneficial. So I would definitely recommend applying earlier. You don't have to submit early decision. You can still do rolling decision, but make sure that you are applying. Typically by December is my my best advice.
Yeah. So UB does have early action, so that's not binding, and it doesn't require you to make your decision before May 1st. You still have until the universal decision day to make your decision, but early action students do find out a little bit sooner than regular decision students if they've been accepted, but again, not binding. Our next deadline is, or excuse me, that is November 15th. That's the early action deadline. The next deadline to keep in mind is the scholarship deadline. That's December 15th. You'll automatically be considered for scholarships if you complete by that date. And then we do have almost a priority deadline of February 1st for regular decision. We are rolling, so you can apply past that point, but students that apply past February 1st, we can't guarantee that we'll be able to still have seats open, particularly in the major you may want, or that we'll be able to get you a decision before the May 1st deadline when you need to decide and when other schools you've applied to are going to want you to make a decision. So February 1st is really the absolute latest we encourage students to apply by, but you can apply past it if, maybe you've applied to other schools and then you realize that you've decided not to go there, or maybe you didn't get into those schools and then you are looking for another school. We will take an application past February 1st.
At Erie, most of our programs are rolling admissions, so we will start accepting fall applications typically right around this time of year, and we'll continue to accept them up until when classes start, thereabouts. But as the other reps have said, the earlier the better. That way you can hear from us sooner. We do have some programs that have application deadlines. Those tend to be our more competitive programs, so the health science area typically. If you are interested in any of those programs, you do want to make sure that you check out the website, speak with one of our admissions representatives to find out what that application deadline is and what a complete application for that program looks like. Some of those programs do require letters of recommendation. They might require certain transcripts to be sent in, things along those lines. So you want to make sure that you're fulfilling all those requirements by those deadlines.
Great. The next question is it's a little bit about financial aid. I don't know if you'll have the answers to this, and it might actually. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just to add in, so the other part of that question too is when they would start to hear. So I echo what Sydney said too. Obviously, apply even if you don't think you're going to get anything. It's the best way to know. But UB will start sending out our financial aid packages usually in the later spring. So March thereabout or so, and we can't create a financial aid package for you if you don't fill out FAFSA and TAP and those other federal applications. So even again, if you don't think that you're going to get anything, it's important to fill it out, because I have had students call and want to know where that financial aid package is, and they never filled out FAFSA or TAP. I'm like, well, we can't tell you if you don't fill out these applications. So it is important to do it.
When are financial aid packages sent out? Yeah, did you answer? I didn't know if you answered that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So for UB, it normally starts sometime around March.
I forgot to mention with Damon, as long as your financial aid package is sent to us, your FAFSA, you'll be packaged within about a week of your acceptance and get your financial aid package within about 2 weeks. So the FAFSA opens up on October 1st. Tomorrow, wow. I always recommend not applying on October 1st because every student in America tries to and the website always crashes. So don't stress yourself out on applying on October 1st, but within the next couple of weeks, send it over. Like I said, we haven't even started reviewing applications yet, so it's not like you have to super rush, but it is important to kind of get it out of your way. So maybe mid to late October, fill out your FAFSA, and then about 2 weeks from your acceptance, you'll get your financial aid package.
Yeah, and similar at Erie, students will be, once they're accepted, that's when our financial aid office can begin processing that information. So again, probably sometime during our spring semester, those notifications are typically sent out. One thing to notate is that for students who are looking to apply to TAP, for New York State TAP, that is a separate application than the FAFSA application. The FAFSA form will determine if you're eligible for federal work study, Pell Grants, or federal student loans. The TAP application you can complete directly after filling out the FAFSA. It'll link you out to a separate web page. If you don't complete it at that time, you'll need to wait roughly about 5 days or so before you can go back into the New York State TAP website to fill out that application for New York State TAP. So we always encourage you just to do it right afterwards if you're able to. It'll save you some steps in the long run.
There is a box that you can check at the end of the FAFSA that says that you want to link this to your state financial aid, and then that brings it right over to the New York State site. So that really was the last question that I had, because my last one was about the timing of like getting the things in, the applications and everything like that. So was there any questions that came in while we were online? Ms. Wilcox.
Yes, there was a few. So the first one is mainly, I guess there was two that were similar. So starting with classes at ECC, taking some classes for 2 years at ECC, and then transferring to another school. One was specifically for nursing, and the other was more around the liberal arts path. Heather, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about transfer credits.
I can, for sure. So we certainly do have a good chunk of our students who are looking to transfer. We do have transfer counselors at each campus that work with students to do some research on schools, look at majors. In addition to that, we typically will have several visits over the course of the semester from area four-year school transfer representatives. So that's a good opportunity for students to gather some of that information. I would imagine that this time around our visits with those reps will probably end up being virtual, but we do share that information with the campus community, so students can certainly take advantage of that. If you're thinking that you want to start at ACC and then transfer on to a four-year school, we definitely encourage you to make connections to that four-year school, find out what types of classes they suggest that you take with us. There are some schools that like you to complete certain classes with them versus at another college. So it's important to have that information so that you can make good course choices when you are taking classes at the community college. We hate to see you take a class and then find out, hey, it won't transfer, or we really wanted you to take that with us. So making sure that you're linking the two schools and working those classes to the best of your ability to maximize your time at the college. Keep in mind, some programs are more competitive than others to get into at some of the four-year schools. You also want to make sure that you're looking at those admission requirements too, as far as GPA, particular classes, if there's essay components, shadow hours, things along those lines.
Could I just add one thing? I echo absolutely everything Heather said. Just to add on to keeping in touch with that four-year school, some of our programs we actually don't allow transfers into. So for 98% of our programs, we do. It's no problem. However, with PA, PT, and nursing most specifically, we don't allow transfers because our nursing program is a 1+2+1. It means you're doing year 1 at Damon, years 2 and 3 at community college, and then year 4 back at Damon. Because of the way it's structured, it wouldn't be possible to do that nursing program coming from your 2-year associate's degree into a 4-year program. So with nursing specifically, we don't offer a way to kind of transfer into an RN to BS program. We do have an RN to MS program, but our MS is pretty specific. It's an adult gerontology. So it is important to keep in touch with those 4-year schools and make sure that it is possible to even transfer into a specific program and make sure that it's going to be able to happen, because I don't want you to spend 2 years of your life thinking you're going to be able to transfer into Damon for nursing and then have it pretty much not be possible. So just keep in contact with us and we'll be able to tell you all the info you need.
All right, thank you. And the only other question that I see on here that wasn't fully answered yet is, am I automatically applied for scholarships for your school when I submit my application? I know that we touched on merit scholarships, but I don't know if anyone wants to touch a little bit more on any additional scholarships available at your college.
Sure. So I'll jump in here. At UB, as long as you submit your application and your application is complete. So again, you want to send stuff about 2 weeks prior to make sure you're hitting the completion deadline of December 15th, then we do automatically consider you for the scholarship that we have in our office, which is called the Pride of New York. In addition to that, there is a presidential scholarship that's through our Honors College that does have an additional application, though, that you need to fill out through the Honors College, and they will have additional essays and an interview process that you need to complete to go through for that scholarship. It is highly competitive and very difficult to get, but if you are a extremely high achieving student, certainly apply for it, because not very many students really qualify, and if you're at that level, you might. So that one is also available. Those are the main ones that you can get as incoming freshmen. That being said, once you're at UB, because of all the research that we do and the experiential learning and the other, offices that we have on campus and the opportunities that we offer to our students, there are a lot of different scholarships and fellowships and other types of funding programs that you can be eligible for once you're a current student at UB. And that's including starting in your freshman year. You just have to be a current student before you can start applying for those. So I think a lot of times students panic a little bit when they're not offered a scholarship coming right out of high school through the admissions office. But if that's the case, it doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to fund your schooling with any scholarships or anything like that. There's 1,000,001 different things available to you. You just have to get to UB and start, taking advantage of what we offer in order to start applying for those. But the whole point is that, UB is there to set you up to succeed and to be able to get those. I'll also plug, though, that we will take any third-party outside scholarship that you receive, whether it's through your high school or, through maybe mom and dad's work, or through a Rotary or a church or some other community organization, whatever the case might be. There's a website that we tell students to look into. It's called fastweb.com. It's a great resource to start with if you haven't heard of it, and it'll point you in the direction of scholarships that you might be eligible for. Students a lot of times don't want to take the time to do it. It requires maybe an extra application or another essay that they have to write, but there is so much money out there. You can fund your schooling with scholarships. You just have to take the time and the effort and put it into it in order to get it back. So it's what you put into it, I guess, is the best way to put it. So apply for things, look for them. There's a lot out there that you can get to fund your schooling.
And at Erie, as I mentioned before, our scholarships are not merit-based. They're typically run through our foundation. But in addition to that, we also do have a bookstore scholarship that is available for students to apply to. I think the amount varies, usually about $250, but it'll at least help make a dent in some of those textbook costs for students. And again, echoing what Christina said, check out the external resources for scholarships, because there is so much out there.
Here at Damon, and you might see my cat's tail waving right now. She just decided to get up on my lap, so I apologize. But at Damon, you are automatically considered for any merit scholarships. Absolutely. Like I said, our scholarships, the initial merit scholarships at least, range from $7,000 to $12,500. So you are guaranteed to get at least $7,000 once you are admitted into Damon. Absolutely, we will accept any outside scholarships as well. Like Chrissy said, if it's just writing an essay is the requirement for the scholarship, what's an hour of your life to fund your education? And going from your senior year of high school into your freshman year of college is absolutely the time when the most scholarships are available to you. So it may stink in the direct time that you are sitting down and writing those scholarships, but 100% it is worth it. I grew up in a small town, and there are tons of scholarships despite being from a small town, because all those small community organizations do give out scholarships. They want to help support their local students. So I know these aren't the largest towns, but compared to where I'm from, they are. So I'm sure there are plenty of scholarships available within your community, local banks, local community centers, organizations. Just sit down and write the essay. I promise you will never regret it. Also, even if you only meet the factors for 50% of the scholarship requirements, still apply, because so many scholarships go unapplied for For example, when I was in high school, I originally went to be a phys ed teacher. Like I said, people change their majors all the time. That clearly did not happen for me. I was able to get a scholarship for students going to health professions because I wanted to educate students on how to live a healthier lifestyle. Meanwhile, the scholarship was meant for students going to become doctors or physician assistants or nurses. And I just don't think the scholarship was that applied for. So I think I got it by default, but I'm not complaining by that. So absolutely apply for any scholarships you meet even 50% of the criteria for. You will not regret it.
Was there any other questions that came in through the course of the session?
There is one more that just popped in. Do you accept college credits from classes taken in high school?
We do. Absolutely.
Yeah, we do as well. So, I encourage students to try to take those. They're 1-for-1 transfers usually. So, they're a great starting point for students in high school to come in with some credits. I encourage you, we were talking about, the transfer bit earlier and also for students taking college credits while still in high school. Use our website. It's called Taurus, taurus.buffalo.edu. You can input the classes you've taken and where you took them, and it'll give you an idea of how it would transfer at UB. So it's not a definitive end all be all, but it'll at least give you an idea so that you have, some knowledge going into it. And in order to actually transfer those classes, we do just simply need you to send the official transcript from the actual college. We can't take the credit off of the high school transcript. So we do need that separate transcript to come in.
And same as the other schools, we do accept transfer credit for courses students take in high school. Our school does require that students earn at least a C- or higher in that course for transfer credit, and we don't transfer in the grade, we only transfer in the credit. So while that C- is our minimum, certainly work towards gaining those A's and B's on those courses. It's only going to help you in the long run.
Great. So I think that is probably it for tonight. This whole session has been recorded, so you can go back to this link that you checked in on. And if you wanted to hear something again, if you said, oh, I thought that I heard them talk about this, you can go back in and see this whole recording. The financial aid presentation is on there then also. So feel free to go to any of our counseling center websites, to the high school, and then follow the links through. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to the college reps. We appreciate it. We know this is, I guess, our new normal right now. Hopefully it won't be for too long, but thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.